Just first time on the stream. Very quickly, like obviously you're the editor-in-chief of Jalopnik.com. For how long? It's been like a couple of years now, right?
No, I think it's been a little bit more than a year. I think I was like May 2020.
Cool.
I have yet to be in my office or really meet anyone except for my immediate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm a COVID baby.
Well, as a former, whatever it's called, Geo Media, is it Go Media or Geo Media? I actually have never asked somebody that.
It's Geo.
Geo. So as a former Geo Media employee many years ago, you have a good team. Like Jalopnik is a good crew. So like, yeah. Not that I think anybody there is bad. I don't mean it like that, but it's like what a fun group of people. But yeah, that's super bizarre to start a job and then be like Zoom only for over a year.
Yeah, I've I knew Torch and David and a couple of the other people, Aaron, who recently departed. Going back years.
She went to another job. She died. She didn't die. Oh, she died.
Yeah, no, she did die as well.
That's
yeah. So
that's fine. No big loss.
Yeah, we weren't too upset about it.
Well, I want to go through Bring a Trailer. That's this whole segment, right? Like, it's like just kind of looking at Bring a Trailer stuff. But what I also want to know, like, very quickly, I don't even know if this channel is like a car channel. It just happens to be that I'm a car dork, and so like car stuff is here. But very quickly, tell me what cars you have. I'm curious. I know about the GX because I can see it. But what else is there?
Yeah, I pulled the GX in. I'm working out of my shop right now because we're gutting the house. We've actually never lived in this house anyway. But I have GX that I drove in this morning, pulled into the garage because it was raining. It's lightly modified. It's lifted and has a winch, and right now has a rooftop tent that I'm borrowing from Roof Nest for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
The usual overland poser lighting stuff.
You don't have to say poser. It's implied when you say overland.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I've got an 84 911, which you can kind of see right there, which is up on the lift because it's a fucking mess and has been for the last like 8 years. And I've got a 48 Willys CJ2A that is also a mess. It's in the barn right now, and a 2015 manual GTI, my wife's car. So four cars in the stable.
That's a good enthusiast stable. Like there's no clunkers in that. Like
I mean, I've done my best to turn them into clunkers. They were blue chippy type collector cars when I got them. And
well, this is actually a fantastic segue because I wanted to talk about. I do want to go to Brain Trailer, but like as a Toyota guy, and also, well, I'm not a Toyota guy. It's a guy who's owned Toyotas, and also, so I'm like trying to help a friend of mine shop for a first generation Tacoma at the moment, despite me saying like I don't know that it's worth what people are charging now. Like I saw this come up on Jalopnik yesterday, and I'm curious because I feel like your GX, maybe other people were doing it, but it was kind of the beginning. When I owned a Land Cruiser, everybody kind of turned their nose up at the GX, which is in the global market is a Prado. It's like it's still branded as a Land Cruiser Prado. But in the US, for whatever reason, people were always like, it's not a real Land Cruiser. But now I feel like, just like always happens in cars, and especially happens in 4x4s, people were like, no, it's actually great. Like, it's totally a great truck for doing truck stuff. But yours was one of the first ones I noticed. And now I feel like 3 or 4 other people in my general proximity have bought one. So, like, are they still good deals? Can you still get a GX, or did the market already, like, screw those?
The market is coming up on them pretty fast. I feel like with a lot of things in life, I tend to like get things right before they go crazy. Like I'm not early, like one of the cool people,
right?
But I like follow enough of the cool people that I can kind of see that stuff coming. So I got in, I don't know, a year little more than a year or two ago, maybe 2 years ago.
I got to move this cat. Sorry, keep talking.
Oh, it's okay. And they're, like I said, they're coming up. Certainly like good ones, low mileage ones. Minty ones are more expensive than they were when I got it. But as far as like value wise, I mean, I think they're still cheaper than the equivalent Land Cruiser and cheaper than the equivalent LX. So I think like there's still if you're looking for a V8 body on frame, four-wheel drive, like it's still a reasonably good deal. And like as they've become more popular, the ability to like buy parts and has gotten a lot better. So
yeah, if you are a mod dork, I mean, I've owned a 100 series Land Cruiser, briefly owned a truck that I loaned to Jalopnik, which was known as the 3Runner, which was a third gen 4Runner. Yep. And then I owned Tacoma the longest and like poured the most money somewhat pointlessly into it. And the thing that was the most surprising to me that I enjoyed about the Tacoma, because it wasn't like an amazing truck. It was just a truck, but it's like the engine's really underpowered. It didn't have a lot of features. It was just a truck. But the thing that's awesome about it is because it was the first time in a long time that I'd owned a vehicle that was new enough and popular enough that there was this giant aftermarket community for it. And like, it's been driving me nuts ever since on all the other cars I've bought subsequently, because I got really spoiled to be like, I want this one part. Which of the 15 manufacturers do I want to buy the part from? And like, that was the best part about the Tacoma, even though I don't think I'd ever buy one again, especially now because Tacomas and 4Runners have this reputation as being some sort of mythical, better than every truck that's ever been engineered, even if they're 30 years old, reputation. And now dealers are charging, like, just adding $20,000 or $30,000 to the price for no reason.
Yeah. We put this up yesterday. We had, and Zarin posted it on Twitter, but the incredible. I mean, right now everything is crazy. Like the car market, dealers that feel like they can charge anything. But we put this up yesterday. It was like one of the better performing stories we had. But yeah, you see a $23,000 bump, and then I think the one right under that, they're asking. They've pushed the price of a 4Runner up to $82,000, which 4Runner is a great truck, and I mean I don't have anything really bad to say about them.
No, they're fine.
But yeah, $82,000. I mean, you're talking like you can buy a lot of different cars for $82,000, and then below that, even we have the same dealer pushing it well into the six figures. I think, what does that say?
Yeah, here we go. Inventory totals, try $135,000. $135,000 for a $50,000 truck. Yeah. And to also be clear, the 4Runner hasn't been updated in like a decade. Yeah. It's just a truck. That's why you buy a Toyota, in theory, is that they're just trucks and they're not that fancy and they're maybe don't break down as easy or whatever. But like, that's nuts. That's like, you could buy a lightly used G-Wagon, for $135,000. Like,
yeah. Really, any other car that is like in that general price range is going to be like twice as nice. Yeah. And like, again, like you said, they're rugged and they do truck stuff better than a lot of those other cars. But, and I think too, like this dealer is going to ask $135,000, and then someone's going to come in and say they really want it, and they'll be like, okay, try to make a deal halfway in between. But regardless, completely nuts. And I mean, I think like the car market, and I think when we get talking about bringing a trailer, it's like people seem to have too much money. And they can obviously spend it the way they want to spend it, but like you don't need a new 4Runner that much. No one needs a new 4Runner that much.
Right.
A conceivable case where you would need to pay double or triple.
I think the reason that Toyota Premium drives me crazy right now is because they are selling an image, not like a false image, but they're selling this image of like ruggedness.
Yeah.
But a brand, even if you bought it for $50,000, like a $50,000 4Runner is probably not going to be taken off road that much. And probably not what you want to take off road, because as I have learned by spending my own money, the best thing to take off road is something that you don't care about that much and is cheap and is like ideally a dedicated off-road vehicle. And so I guess it just makes me mad because I don't feel like Toyota earned this like reputation. It's like their reputation they earned on the old trucks and from the old Top Gear episode where they dropped the Hilux off a building. That has somehow carried into this thing where they can sell the simplest product in the world and in the car world and be the most expensive margins. Yeah. And I guess it shouldn't bother me as much as it does, but for whatever reason, it really does.
I mean, I love, like, I honestly, like, I'm a big fan of the if it ain't broke, don't fix it type model. And like, you know, that's like the appeal of the 911 too, or the old 911s was just like this gradual improvement of like, we have a proven platform and like we make it a little bit better every year. And we don't really like, we believe in the fundamental like principles that these vehicles are derived from. So like, I actually like the prices don't bother me. The MSRPs don't bother me. What bothers me is the markups. But I also think too, like that's your point. Like I see a lot of TRD Pro 4Runners in town here, and like none of them are going off road. None of them have ever been off road. None of them have a scratch anywhere on them, which is fine because like I don't know, 4 years from now, someone like me will buy one and then wheel the shit out of it, which is like that's how I ended up with the GX. It was like, you know, when I left Auto Week, needed a like reliable daily driver that I could put kids in and that I could like put car seats in and just forget about the back seat for a few years because it's going to get absolutely ruined. And then like, you know, the GX going off road and getting scratches all over the bodywork and like hitting things and tearing up the underside of it, like does not even enter into like a world where I could be stressed about it. Like it doesn't matter to me at all. It's like it's a cheap car, relatively cheap car that I built to beat the shit out of. Like,
yeah,
that's its purpose. And like,
I feel like I don't know what it is. I can't put it into words, and honestly, it doesn't matter. But I can tell that like my ire around this is not totally fair, and I think that's why I keep getting stuck on it. Where I'm like, it's somebody else's money. I agree with the philosophy of if it's not broke, don't fix it, because there's plenty of new vehicles that I've really enjoyed, but then like the electronics, something breaks in the electronics, and then it's like now I'm screwed, and that's not really part of the truck off-road ethos. And I'm also like a constant defender, for whatever reason, just to argue on the internet, I guess, of people who are like, I don't know why somebody has to spend $70,000 on a pickup truck. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, if you live in most of the rest of the country, a pickup truck's a pretty great daily driver. And like, even if you don't put, livestock in the back, you can still do stuff with it. Like, I wish I had a truck, and I live in Westchester, right? Like, and so I get mad. I defend a lot of that stuff, but there's just something in particular on the Toyotas where I think I loved them more when they were cheap and overlooked. And now that they didn't change, but the perception of it has changed, I don't know. It just bugs me for some reason.
I get that. I mean, there's like there's a thing where it's like the ruggedness and the simplicity of it has become like a brand thing where it's like you as a buyer can choose to adapt the Toyota thing as part of your persona to the point where like people are paying and overpaying to be like a part of that. So it's like, it's like buying Patagonia stuff or buying like
it's stolen valor.
Yeah, it's like where it's like this. It becomes a premium. It becomes premium in its simplicity or in its ruggedness. It's like, you're making a statement as a buyer. I get that entirely, and it's like, I mentioned like feeling like a poser before, but it's like that is something I think a lot about, where it's like I drive this lifted truck with KO2s and like
Yeah.
method wheels, and it's like, I don't drive it everywhere, but it's like, man, if I go a month without like getting it stuck or trying to off road or wheel somewhere, like I start to feel guilty. Like, oh man, like
Yeah.
here I am in my costume, like driving around looking like off-road cosplayer versus like someone who's actually using the truck for what it's meant for.
I had something kind of similar. So my Tacoma, I bought it for 30 grand, and I easily dropped another 20 grand in hardware into it. Although in fairness, like 13 grand of that was the big fancy pop-up tent bed, whatever you call it, bed cover, but not a bed cover, a shell. It was a shell with a tent. Yep. And so like, but I had armor, I lifted it, I like put all sorts of lights. Like it was like a very nice off the shelf Tacoma World example of like, this is what a hardcore rig is.
Yeah.
And what I found was that a lot of the stuff I did with it was solo camping. And I slept in that truck. I counted it up one time, and it was like at least over 100 nights or something within like a 18-month period. There was a period of time where I was using it all the time. But now when I look back on it, I'm like, what it would have been just as good as spend the 13 grand on that cool camper and put it on a normal truck, and it wouldn't have looked good on Instagram, and it wouldn't have been whatever. But I built it up because and I knew I was doing this at the time, and I was like, this is so stupid, but it was actually good for me at the time. I just needed a project, and I got into it. But every step that I did with it, I was like, well, I don't want to go really hardcore off-road until I lift it. And then I lifted it, and I was like, I probably should put armor on this thing because like I'm going to be out, and I'm like, I probably should put a winch on this, and so I built this like amazing vehicle, and then I had 50 grand into it, and I was like, well, now I don't want to wreck it. So like, I don't want to go hard. So I was that douchebag. I wasn't a poser in the sense that I did actually use my truck, and I did take it. I didn't off-road is strong. Like I went on a lot of fire roads and back up on bad roads. But I look back at that whole experience now going, my farmer hillbilly cousin who welds his own like off-road vehicles together, like what he said to me when I bought that thing and showed it to him, and I was so proud, has like always been stuck in my head, where he was like, this is too nice. Like, it's like, why did you do this? Like, you're never gonna use this. So I guess with the Toyota stuff, to me, it is like price is a factor in this. And when you could go buy an old 4Runner for 3 grand and then drop 3 grand into it and do something good with it, like you still, even if you wrecked it, you were okay with that amount of money out. But now I want to see like 4Runners specifically on Bring a Trailer, like how nuts some of this stuff has been. I got to say offhand, just looking at these prices, like this is insane. Like a 3rd gen 4Runner for $26,000, unless there's something particularly unique, like that's an insane price.
Yeah, it's low mileage, but pretty much looks like a stock 4Runner to me.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I've learned by buying a few vehicles and also just watching Bring a Trailer for years is that if you really do want something, and you got to ask yourself very quickly, like, do I want this because these are having a moment?
Right.
And because if so, like, just wait, because they will fall out of fashion very quickly as well.
And I think too, with Bring a Trailer, there's something about like them being able to make a market. And I think like, I've known Randy, who started it, since really close to the beginning of the site. The early appeal of it, I think, like before they were even auctioning cars, when it was just like guys passing links of cars that were on Craigslist or eBay back and forth, is like there was, especially early on, there was like a like underappreciated cars or cars that didn't really have like a big following, cheap and cool. Randy and Gentry, who's the other guy, had a really good eye for that stuff, and like you could point to a handful of cars that like they made a market for, like were overlooked. Giulia's are one that to me was like the prototype.
That's all them.
Yeah, it was like nobody wanted the 4-door Alpha sedan until like they started posting them, and it was like they were cool because they were cheaper than a GTV. You know, like it was like GTVs are going a little crazy. Like, let's see what else there is that offers a similar experience for less money. And like, but now the bring a trailer thing, and like because it's an auction, and I think too because like they deliver so many like unicorn type cars, like even among these where it's like, okay, I want the car that I had that, you know, when I was a teenager or whatever, or when I was in college, but I don't want one that's beat. I want one that's brand new. And
Yeah.
it's like it's a magnet. Like look at these foreigner listings. Like every one of these, or almost every one of these, is like a brand new car. Like even the higher mileage ones are like, and it's like, you know, with the auction, it's like all you need is two people who want that, you know, like who want.
Right. And also, I mean, you get the nature of a public auction site. Like you get to. I've had friends that bought stuff on here. I'm sure as you have too. And it's like you'll pay a 10 or 15% premium just to like have the excitement of bidding in public with your friends to be like, I'm really going for this one. Like this is where I'm going. But to the point that you have, which a lot of people have brought up in, you know, auto journalism, car enthusiasm in general, which is like people our age. I don't know exactly how you are, but we're in the same ballpark. I hope. Like the cars from the 90s in particular, and like Japanese muscle, or whatever you would call it, Japanese sports cars, like started spiking a few years ago. And you know, it's like this very normal thing, which is like, oh, well, that's what happened in the 70s for 50s stuff with like Happy Days nostalgia and American Graffiti and all this. And it's like, there's part of me that is going, we've seen this cycle enough now with cars. We should be smarter than this. And so I get mad when like a lot of people my age are like, I'm going to buy that like 3000 GT, or I'm going to like spend a ton of money on this Civic because that's what I wanted in high school, where I'm like, man, I totally hear you, but like you could still go buy that Civic somewhere not on Bring a Trailer and get it for what that Civic should be worth. Like you don't need to buy the best one, best example in the country. But that's also me, what do they say, yucking someone else's yum. And so like I should probably just not give a shit.
Yeah, I think there's something too, like there's a Bring a Trailer premium now where it's like, you know, especially early on, like, and I think even still, there's like a level of like curation that happens. Like you can't just list anything on Bring a Trailer, and so there's like an inherent level of like, not that you're going to pay a little bit of a premium, I think, and I think that there's an assumed level of quality with the site versus like, oh, I found it on eBay or whatever, that like means something to people. And I think too, like you said, there's a visibility thing where it's like, oh, you know, Bring a Trailer, like, yeah, that's where I got this car.
Yeah.
You know, you're on that site every day, you probably saw this thing. And like, I don't know, whatever. I get it. I like am a serial like underbidder on Bring a Trailer, so I have not bought anything on there, but I also like probably twice a month will bid.
Really?
What I think is a reasonable deal.
Oh, that's fun.
On something, and then just like watch it go past.
All right. If it doesn't blow out a spot, like because you're gonna bid on another one if you see one, like what's the last couple of things you've bid on?
Oh God. I've been actually looking at BMW stuff lately, and I think the last car I bid on was an E36 M3. This was probably last month, and I think like those, like to me, that was my introduction to M cars. There was a guy in town that had E36, the lightweight, the white with the BMW flag on the hood. There were a couple of them running around town, and it was like that was a very interesting car to me, just because it was like, you know, it was like that factory hot rod thing, and it was, you know, the whole appeal of the M3s early, or like the BMWs generally too, is like, here are sedans that are made to run with supercars, and they're, you know, kind of like the smartest engineers at BMW trying to figure out how to make, you know, a very average or very, you know, like unremarkable body type, like a sedan or a you know, sports sedan, a sport coupe, run with a 911. Like that was really cool to me. And I feel like the E36s are probably like more affordable. Like E30s are gone completely.
Yeah, it's done.
E30.
That's an 830.
Yeah, and E46s are starting to be a little bit more collectible for good reason. I think they're probably a better car than the E36, but the E36 to me is a car that like I connected with really.
That I want.
Yeah, well, I remember like being at the mall. This is like this is whenever I think of like early car experiences. I was at the Grand Traverse Mall in Traverse City where I grew up, and I remember like walking through the parking lot and seeing from like across the parking lot the grill of E36 M3. They had like massive like pie plate size fans in the radiator, and like that was how I spotted the car. And I like remember walking up across the parking lot to like check it out, but like seeing those and just like I said, feeling like it's like low key, but you had something very special. And like and at that point too, like it was an older car. Like it, you know, it was like it was, you know, 10 years old at that time. So it was like I don't know, just they're I think a good value, and again, like aesthetically cool, and I don't know.
No, you don't have to explain. Yeah. How old are you though? I'm curious because
I'm 38, so I graduated high school in 2001.
So it's funny because I don't I never got the M3 bug. I had a 2002, I had a 75 2002, which I really loved and got rid of and shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But that was like, and I'm a BMW motorcycle guy. Like I love BMW, the Motorrad stuff to this day. But there are three, so I'm 43, class of 95. There were three E36s that two of which are still in my friends group's life. Like they were definitely, because we were all, you know, part of the sub 10-second Civic sport compact car generation. And so we all had like crappy Civics and Preludes of some variety, some not so crappy actually. But the E36, there was a rich kid who had a purple one, which I think he still has. In fact, I think he bought a double of, and that just became his signature car. This like greasy metalhead guy that should have been really cool, but I despise him. He's not great. And then, but that was like the first real sports car that any of our kind of extended friends group had gotten, where we were like, holy crap, like this is a real thing. And he'd bought it, I think, relatively close to new. This would have been like early 2000s. Yeah. And then another friend of mine bought a black one that he still has to this day. It was the last sports car that he ever bought, basically. And he's bought like practical stuff and fixed it up subsequently. That's been sitting, I think the head gasket's blown for a while. And then a friend of mine, who was like the worst mechanic, and I'm a bad mechanic of the group, but was like the worst mechanic of all of our friends group, who is now an incredible mechanic, like the best of all of us, both in skill and discipline, just bought, he had a black one, which he still has, that was like trashed. And he just bought one out of Texas in Estoril blue with a white interior. And in literally 6 weeks that he's had it, he's moved almost everything that he could from the old car into the new car. Like all car restoration projects turned out to go way deeper than he needed to. But I think he bought this one, or not this one, but he bought the Estoril one for like $8 or $9 grand, and it ran. He drove it from Texas back to Missouri. Yeah. And these appeal to me a lot too. And I think they're weird because I feel like good weird, because they had a moment where they were going up and now they've like fallen back down again. but I would much rather have one of these as a long-term project car than an E30, because like the E30 is too nice to work on at this point and have fun with. But yeah, it's just funny that you know, when we were teenagers, we were 5 years apart or whatever, which is a lot. But it's like these cars definitely like set alone for I think a lot of people our age as like they weren't the NSX, they weren't like the Supra, they weren't the thing that was like obviously this amazing thing, but you saw these a lot more, and like knowing that they're attainable now is cool. Which one of these did you bid on?
I honestly don't remember.
What was your ceiling then? Like what seems fair to you?
I think it was like 18 or 20 or something like that. I have to look. I don't remember it. Like,
and how much money do you make it? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I'm just curious. Like, what like a modern enthusiast would say, like, this is a reasonable amount to pay for one of these.
I mean, I would feel like if you get one for less than 20, you'd stolen it. You know, like it and I feel like that's like a nice one, like not a beater. But I feel like that's kind of a value, or like I said, you stole it. Like that's a good value. I'm gonna look at now and
also
see
I need to be able to clown on my friend and say the editor of Jalopnik agrees with me, but I'm so mad at my buddy. This actually is a gray interior, but he has the white cream interior on the new one he bought on the Estero one, and he's taking it all out. Isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
Like the white interior is so good.
Yeah. No, it's not like you're gonna have like little kids eating ice cream in it. Like that's sick. I think that's very cool.
I told him very specifically, because I actually was back in Kansas City a few weeks ago, and I told him very specifically, like, you do what you got to do at your car, but like, do not sell any of this white interior, because if nothing else, like, I will buy the white interior from you just to make sure that it always has the possibility to go back in.
It was this 97. What was it? Shit. It was an Estero blue car, but I can't remember which one it was. Anyway, you'd think I would remember the stuff, but the one that I always remember that got away from me at Bring a Trailer was several years ago. There was a Rocket 88, like a 50 Rocket 88 that was like a semi hot rod that was like had the beginnings. You could tell like someone. There it is, right there. That one right there. This 50.
This guy. Oh, here we go.
One down. Like you can tell.
Oh, that one. I wasn't even looking at it. Yeah. Okay.
You can tell that somebody started like hot rodding it because it's got like some modified interior and like the trim is removed and like it was just the beginnings of somebody's crazy hot rod project. And for whatever reason, I kind of wussed out on it. I think I bid for like 6 or 7 or something like that, and it went for whatever 9. But like, this would have been such an ideal car to have. I was living in Detroit, and it was like this thing would have been such a killer driver to just ride around and go to shows and you know.
I mean, there's nothing better. They always say don't buy somebody else's project, but buying somebody else's project, if they've actually done a lot of the hard work, is pretty great. You know, if you get it for the right price.
And I think like if your intention is just to leave it, like which was like what I would have done with it is never have touched it or you know, just keep it running, keep it on the road as kind of a time capsule. Like that would have been ideal. I mean, obviously I probably would have, like all my other cars, ran it into the ground, but
yeah, that's fine.
They're
rare, but they're not that rare. I mean, I don't know. There's definitely part of me that just thinks if you own any car that you don't drive it, like that's a crime against humanity. Like there's a few cars with stories, maybe like race cars that like won a thing or whatever. It's like fine, but man, I hope I never get to a point where I have so much money I can buy something that I can afford not to drive. Like that's crazy.
Even then, like all the race cars have been rebuilt a million times. It's like if you're not racing them and wrecking them, like I agree. It's kind of a waste. They're meant to be driven, and the reality is like entropy is coming for all of these,
Yeah.
whether you want it to or not. Like you can put it wherever you want, but like its time in this world is limited, and yeah, it should be used and used up. I mean, and too, like if a car is truly valuable, it's restorable. And,
Right.
if it has kind of like intrinsic long-term value, then someone will fix it down the road, or I will fix it, or whatever.
Yeah, and also like post the resto mod era, like in the last 10 or 15 years, I think people are far less precious about period correct everything as well.
Yep.
And so you really do just get down to, does it have a VIN? Is
Yeah.
it still basically the same thing that it was? I'm trying to find real quick, and I've looked this car, like talking about like ones that got away. And if I recall correctly, so this is a very similar, like I had a Malaga Square Tail 2002. I like had whatever, I can't remember, they're like Conies or something, like the normal lowering shocks. And then the previous owner had like taken the bumpers off, put some air dams on. But it was like a real, it was just a stock carbureted 2002 in Malaga, but it was very pretty, very fun. And I sold that and immediately realized, or very quickly realized, like, oh no, like that was a mistake. Like I paid $4,000 for that car. I kept it. I probably put 3,000 or 4,000 in it while I was driving it, and I would have happily just thrown it in a barn, on the farm somewhere, and gotten back to it when I was ready. And you can still find 2002s, but anyway, there was this one that came up, and there's so many that come through Bring a Trailer. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find the one I'm thinking of, but there was one that was basically race prepped with a UPS livery in a brown, which I would have taken the UPS livery, joke livery off eventually, probably. But it was something that, it was one of those ones when I saw it, I thought, there's no way that this is going to sell for a price I can afford. And then I think it sold for like 14 grand, and it had a new engine. It was like, that was the one to keep forever. Even if I painted it a different color in the future, like somebody did all the work on that. And 14 grand, this is like probably, I don't know, these all ended 17. And I believe this auction was even before then. But like, I look back, is that right though? Ring trailers run further back than 14. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's been around.
But yeah, that's the one I'll go look at sometimes when I get a wild hair and think, do I want another 2002? Because I'm like, can I go track that one down in particular again? But yeah, that's the good opportunity for Bring a Trailer. I do think it's like, as long as you're not on something that's a hot, trendy thing, you can find something that somebody owned for 5 years, poured a ton of love and money into, and are just done with it. And if they made the same choices you would have made, if you're okay with owning somebody else's work, which on a classic I think is even less scary than it is on a new car, because it's like they all break anyway. So it's like,
you assume there's going to be some sorting and fiddling to get it to where you want it to be. I just logged into my old Bring a Trailer account from where I was at when I was at Auto Week, and found a car that I bid on. Let me see if I can bring it up. Shit, I just lost it. It was like, this was 2018. I didn't bid very much. Log in. That won't. It was this little shuttle. Hold on. Let me find it. Totally like bizarre space, like little space. It looks like the transporters from Star Trek.
the transporters, you mean the shuttles?
Here it is. It's put in the search, put Interstyle. So it's INTERSTYL, Hustler 6. Or just Hustler. Probably it's the only car called the Hustler.
Did I spell Interstyle right?
Yeah, you put a E at the end. There's no E, obviously.
Oh, I see.
A classy,
It's,
kind of
oh,
European.
holy crap.
Yes, very, very elegant, handsome machine. Six wheels, which is what you want, I think, a minimum.
It's a mini mechanicals.
Yep.
This is a very
Very.
good car.
It would have been sweet for a guy like me, like I said, a young man living in Detroit. Go out to bars and meet some very interesting people, I'm sure.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
But
the best car for Detroit is definitely one full of big panes of glass.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's plastic, to be fair. But yeah, I can't imagine what I was thinking bidding on this thing. I think actually Myron Vernus was one of the other guys who made a run at this guy.
I mean, for the right price, this is like would be a great run around. And plus in Detroit, if you're never getting on the highways, like you can get all over the place and you're never going over 40 or 50 anyway. So like,
oh, yeah. I
like
mean, that Willys was like not a daily driver, but it was at least bi-weekly driver. I drove it to work. I think at one point I put 20 some hundred miles in a year on that car, just driving around Detroit at 35 miles an hour from bar to bar. And we had like an insane, used to be a Norman dealership. And then it became a Chrysler dealership, but it was, I think, 5 floors. It was like you drive up like a spiral, basically a garage, and we had the top floor. And it now is the Carhartt flagship store in the new center. But I think we were each paying $150 a month to store and work on cars there. That was like the peak Detroit gentrifier shithead era.
yeah.
Where, a guy like me could roll in and just totally take advantage of low prices and cheap beer. It's a good time.
And nobody inspecting, checking anything out. Yeah. No, I when we lived in Detroit, I mean, we moved there because General Motors was our biggest client. And like the short reality was we knew we were probably going to lose GM as a client within like a year. And we didn't think living there would save it, but it was like we were trying to get out of Brooklyn and we're like, all right, let's try it. And probably the worst thing, like we love Detroit, not enough to move back there, but like, we really enjoyed it. But the hardest thing that we dealt with, honestly, was the fact that all the native Detroiters presumed we were coming there to like take advantage of the poverty. Like, yeah. And so anybody from out of town, like we had to spend a lot of time being like, we're like not, we don't have enough money to like take advantage of anything. Like we're just here doing our thing. And like, yes, it'd be nice if we can find a home here or establish ourselves here, but also like we would do that. And then what would happen a lot of times is every other person from New York that had moved there that people had known were like, oh yeah, they just built like, or bought an apartment building, for not $1. Everybody thought that was a thing, but it was like they bought an apartment building for $500,000 and then chased everybody out and are renovating it to like get rent to white people. And it was like, yeah, that's not us. Like we actually just moved here to move to Detroit. So like I don't know what to do. Yeah.
I had to be here for work because it was too far to commute otherwise. Yeah. That was us too. We were, like you said, too broke to take advantage of any of the gentrification opportunities.
Yeah. Which, like, I mean, honestly, if you're a Detroit native, like, this is a very big ignore all the race and class problems that Detroit has. But, like, I feel much less weird about almost every Detroiter, whether they were suburban or not, like, has a real loyalty to the city. So it's like I'd rather see those businesses come up. But what we ran into, like, we ran a strategy company and GM was our biggest client, which also meant we couldn't get Ford, we couldn't get Chrysler, and we couldn't work for any of the many companies associated for anyone that wasn't GM. But when we went to go win business for our consultancy, I'd never been in a place in my life where they were like telling me to my face, like, we're not going to give you the business because you guys aren't from Detroit.
Not local, yeah.
And it's like, on one hand, I completely respect it because I'm like, cool, like that's protecting your own, but also like that means you're like always drinking from the same pond. And like, so I thought like maybe you would want to consider us. And I didn't take it, I probably took it very personally at the time. I don't take it personally now, but it was like, it was just a weird thing. It's like, well, yeah, I want you guys to build up and support yourselves and like, and the community vibes. Like I always think of like Detroit, the soccer team, FC, yeah. like the coolest sports team in America, like, and the community behind it, like only could come from Detroit. But it's also like, it was hard to start a business there or continue to grow a business there because it was just like, I can't fix not being from here, but I'm here now. Right. So like, it's not worth anything. And generally the answer was like, no, it's actually not worth anything.
Yeah. The agency kind of consultancy situation in Detroit is pretty dire in that respect. I think like there's a lot of just institutional momentum and inertia around like, you know, these Detroit big three type agencies and consultancies where it's like, it's impossible to even see how the rest of the world views those companies. But it's, I mean, whatever. I was a massive and continue to be shithead, especially when I moved to Detroit. I was one of those guys who was like awed by all the open space.
Yeah.
Just a total, like I look back on some of the conversations that I had with like people who are somehow still my friends, but who are from there. And like, it's like, God damn, like the literal most annoying new Detroiter that you could possibly be. I mean, I was super enthusiastic about it, but it was like a lot of tropes, a lot of the, man, look at all this empty space. Look at all these buildings. We should buy these buildings, you know, like, yeah. And luckily I was too broke to do any of it.
Yeah, it's fun. I just kind of missed it. I think Detroit's a little different for me than maybe other Rust Belt cities because my dad's side of the family is from Detroit. So like I have some, you know, I grew up being like, oh, we're from Detroit, even though I never, you know, lived there. And then I did go to Detroit quite a bit when I was like a young drug eating kid because I had tons of friends that went to school in Ann Arbor. And so we would take the train into Detroit and go to like City Club and all these like goth clubs and stuff. But even at the time, it was like, you know, you could have those kind of venues because things were already sort of lawless and run down and people weren't keeping an eye on things, but never and this is not a virtue. It just was happenstance that I never was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go earn money for 5 years and come back and become a real estate person and buy all this up and do it. You know, it was just always like, this is just how it is. And so, yeah, Detroit is such an interesting, and Michigan in general is such an interesting, anomalous state that I don't think a lot of people even think about the challenges because it's like the pat story of Detroit is very easy to understand and it's largely not true. It's like part of the big problem of Detroit is just the fact that it's just Detroit's a fucking island effectively. You know, it's like it's just its own microculture and that has good parts and bad parts, but like it's really hard to see it from the outside of just being like the story of the big three and all of this other stuff.
Well, yeah, and I think too, like the thing that gets missed in Detroit, like it gets missed everywhere, is like the fall of Detroit is like has causes beyond like the auto industry, and like it is a city that has suffered from kind of institutional racism, and it's the poster child in a lot of ways for like what happens when institutional racism is allowed to like run rampant in a town. Mm-hmm. Like and what happens when you segregate, and what happens when when you bulldoze an active commercial area, black commercial area, and replace it with a freeway. cut people off from the rest of the city. I mean, that stuff we don't talk about in Detroit. And that was one of the shocking things moving there was like, you talk to people who are from there, from the suburbs, white people, and you ask them like, what they think happened or what they think happened in town. And they're like, I don't know. Like,
it's just a mystery.
Yeah, there was riots. And then like my folks moved out of town and I don't really know why any of that happened. It's like, the old American thing where it's like, you love to talk about these events, but you hate to consider the causes and like the whys.
Yeah. I mean, it diminishes the actual nuanced history of Detroit, but just like people say about Japan, it's like Japan is just like every Western country, but more. Like Detroit is always like, to me, Detroit is every American city, but just faster. Like it peaked faster. Like it just in the timeline, like it peaked in the early 20th century and then it collapsed in the middle of 20th century. But it's like what happened there is largely, race and all of the things the rest of the country is dealt with in many different ways, but is slowly in a very infinitesimal way starting to publicly deal with now. And it's like, but it's just like, all the white people left. Like all the white people, like with the money and power, like just pieced out because they could. And then guess what? Like you can't do much with that. Like the city I grew up in Kansas City had the same thing, massive white flight, and a big giant suburb ring, like one of the biggest of the city of its size. Like the white people ran way far out into the flat farmland because they could. And like the only thing that has made it somewhat different is that the city wasn't as big and popular and powerful when that happened. So it hasn't had as far to like kind of come back up. And there's just like literally not as many buildings to fill and stuff. And I'm not saying KC doesn't have tons of problem with power and race and inequality or whatever, but it's like Detroit just got the experience these like wild extremes that people want to talk about the car industry, and it's like it's like it's a factor, but it's not the big dominant thing.
Yeah, no, and I would say too, like, one of the most fascinating in American history is kind of what happened in Detroit. But yeah, I do like when we moved there, I think 2013, I remember having like a Camaro ZL1 for like a week. And I was over by like south of Hamtramck, kind of by the old Packard plant.
Mm-hmm.
I had stopped, and there nobody on the road whatsoever. Stopped on the road at a red light, and I had a couple buddies in the car and did just a massive burnout. White smoke as far as the eye could see. Like you couldn't see the light when it changed. And I came off the gas and noticed that the light had turned green and rolled through the intersection, and there was a cop parked across the intersection from me. So like across the light from me. And he just looked and was like, like, where acknowledged me. But it was like, where else in the world can you get away with that level of being a total fucking shithead? But Detroit, where it's like, cop's not going to get out and like bother you about doing a burnout in the street. Like that's just not even in the realm of what he cares about that day. So, it was a cool place to be a car person, and it's still a very cool place to be a car person. And I really genuinely like miss living there. We live like back in my hometown now, and it's like every day it's like you think about being a city and being close to your friends and your favorite.
Mm-hmm. Detroit's a great city. It is absolutely on the come up. But the come up's going to take still generations, and I think everybody in Detroit knows that and is fine with it. But I think they get mad when other people are like everything's good now, right? And it's like it's still a place with problems, like, and that's okay.
But I think it really depends on what you want. Like for me, it was like, it's like living in New York would be too much for me. Like there's too many people. There's too much. To know, like my thing about New York is like you got to know all the train schedules, and you got to know like when you can't go to this part of town, or like because it's too busy or whatever. And it's like in Detroit, like none of those problems exist. You want to go somewhere, you get in the car and you go. And it's like there's no public transit, that sucks. And there are bad parts of it, but like for someone like me who has like almost no planning or administrative capacity, like to be able to just live in a town that's just like there, and you don't have to think too much about it, especially like if you're a relatively well-off white guy. Like that was, to me, that was great. And like, it's like the city has a long way to go before it's like a bustling metropolis type place. But I don't think I would want to live in a bustling metropolis.
Right. Even if that's if that's what people want, like the interesting, again, waving away a bunch of like race, power, and inequity issues for a moment. Like one of the interesting opportunities as what am I, a fan of architecture? Like that's as far as I could go. But like one of the interesting things, if climate change doesn't nuke us all before this can happen, is the idea that there's this city that has an opportunity to reinvent itself as like a mixed use city over time, right? And like it's not as easy as there's a lot of stuff that literally went to seed, where buildings got burned down or torn down, and now they're big fields and all of that stuff. And that the reason why that happened isn't good. How they interoperate now is not necessarily good, because the city is built in such a way that it needs the tax base to like keep the lights on, keep plumbing running, and have grocery stores. And that's a problem that the city is not equipped to handle. And so you have community groups trying to address some of that. But you can see way off in the future, you can see this really cool potential future where it's a big solid city, and maybe it'll never have whatever the peak population was, 1.5, 2 million people in the city proper, but it will have half that, and it'll be this like really modern kind of mix of both. But that's a utopia. It'll probably never happen. And like that, like who knows what it'll be, but it's just, there's a lot that's being saved in Detroit now, even too, with the spaces and communities and the buildings, that I think is really great. And I hope that there's a way that can continue to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that I loved about the town is like in a lot of cities that didn't kind of hit pause 50 years ago, a lot of like really cool, valuable architecture was torn down and replaced with whatever was modern at the time. And like Detroit, you still have the Fisher Building, you still have the Stott, and you still have Guardian Building, and like all these incredible handmade structures that like no one will ever have again. Like there's no future in which a building like that will ever be made again.
My wife and I eloped in Detroit, and we took the only thing we really spent big money on was our photos. We paid like a good photographer like a couple grand, and which was worth it. He took great photos. But like we did a whole shoot inside the Fisher Building, which was very Detroit. We didn't like book it. We just showed up, and all the guards were like, "You should take pictures up there. It's really cool." And like people see those photos of all the murals and stuff behind us, and they're just like, "Where were you? Like, where did you go to like a temple or whatever?" And it was like, yes, a temple to capitalism and the auto industry, yes, but it's like it's so amazing that those places did get held, and that's plenty of people have written about it. I don't think it's like a secret, but it does drive me a little crazy sometimes of like it's just, if you want one city that's a day's drive from New York, where you could spend easily a good solid weekend, if not a whole week, just seeing incredible architecture, early 20th century architecture, all the way up to like the GM Design Technical Center of like all the mid-century stuff and all the Saarinen stuff. It's like, it's just incredible. And like, even when you go up, past 8 Mile and you're in the burbs, there's all these times where it's like, wow, look at this temple. This synagogue is like unbelievably cool, and it's amazing. and it's just like on the corner next to like, you know, a Wendy's or whatever. And it's like, you go look it up and it's like, yeah, if it wasn't Saarinen, it was like this person trained under Saarinen who like made this stuff. Like it's one of the most beautiful architecture cities in America for sure.
Yeah.
And it's still there. Like it was beautiful. It was at the top when it was alive and built and being grown, but it's still there. And like nobody else has matched that. Like New York has its buildings or whatever, but now all we build is just giant glass bullshit for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, the ability to go into a building and see like handmade hand railings and elevator buttons and door handles and stuff, it's like that'll never happen again. There's
never again. Yeah,
don't know how to do that anymore. And like, yeah, I really miss that about the town. It's just that feeling of like being handmade and being like intentional and like someone designed all this stuff, not like lowest bidder or whatever. It was like someone really thought about how to make this beautiful and make it last.
It was probably the last era where capital put its money into craftsmen, like literal hands of craftsmen, and said, we're going to build this thing. I need the best people to build this thing, as opposed to like, you know, I'm going to hire this design firm to like put all it together. And not saying some of that stuff isn't cool, but it's like, there was no automation at that era. It was still ultimately down to people building stuff. And you see it in the fixtures and the finials and all the stuff. It's just like somebody built each part of this.
And what's interesting about that too is like there was it was a period of massive wealth inequality like we have now. So like you could pay not only were there craftsmen who knew how to do that stuff, but like you could pay 5 guys who just immigrated from Italy to live in your home and do woodwork for 5 years. Like people did that. It's like inconceivable now, just because people don't know how to do that. Like certainly the wealth inequality exists now, but finding people who know how to do that stuff is
there's no market for it. I will let you go because we've hit an hour and I don't want to take too much more of your time. But the one, since this is technically a stream about shopping, like the one thing that I will say that, and I've said this to people before, like the slept on shopping thing in Detroit these days, not by people in Detroit, but for people outside of Detroit, is the estate sale scene in the greater Detroit area is incredible. And I have said for a long time, if I had enough money to do it, I would just straight up, I would open a store in like Brooklyn or Manhattan, and it would just be filled with stuff that I just like the British Museum. I would just be like pulling stuff out of Detroit and like selling it for 10x the price. But it's like between all of the furniture stuff from Knoll and Herman Miller, like all of the mid-century stuff, but there's a specific slice of time that's happening. And I got a few pieces. I didn't buy a lot of big furniture when I was there, but I got a lot of nice smaller things. What I think it is there is a generation of women largely who are still alive, whose husbands predominantly were auto executives in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And those women now are, dying, like, they're in their 80s or 90s. And I went to so many estate sales where I would walk into like a townhome in some pseudo retirement community, and like literally everything in there, as a 35-year-old or however old I was when I was there, everything in there, I was like, this is the coolest, hippest stuff. You could take they had great style, they had great taste, all of this stuff. And then you would have people coming in being like, I don't want this like jazz poster or whatever. I'm like, but it's a real jazz poster. So yeah, I know there's a bit of a looting sense in there. Like, so, like with that caveat, but you're looting from, auto executives' wives, like it's fine. Like nobody else wants the stuff, but there's so much incredible stuff in the estate sales in Detroit. And I just don't feel like anybody in the rest of the country like knows that.
Yeah. No, it's a very easy, spend all of your money is just looking at Craigslist and finding estate sales in Detroit. There's like you said, that's exactly right. I mean, there's like a ton of incredible mid-century stuff there. And I think too, like, yes, on one level it's looting, but on the other level, it's like, it's important for that stuff to be preserved. And
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing if that's like an area where you want there to be, you want to drive up cost in the market because that stuff should be preserved, and it's being undersold for what its actual value is just because it's in Detroit and nobody wants to go up there and pull it out. But maybe next time I invite you on, if you're game, we'll look at Auction Ninja or an estate sale site in Detroit and just look at like furniture and weird stuff there. But I really appreciate you coming on. Yeah, everybody knows Jalopnik, so jalopnik.com. That's where you can find the people that Rory has asked to not freak out and write blog posts are at. So I don't know why I said it that way, except I've run blogs and I feel like mostly my job was just
making sure people didn't freak out. Yeah,
making sure people didn't freak out. So anyway, really appreciate it, and thanks for everybody that tuned in. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, thanks.